If you grew up in America in the 70s, you might remember something like this. The house felt different when you were the oldest. Not bigger, not quieter, just heavier. You heard things first. The baby crying in the next room. The screen door slamming after school. Your mother calling your name from the kitchen before she called anyone else's. Your father asking where your brother was as if somehow you should know. A younger sister tugging at your sleeve because she needed help with something small that did not feel small at all. And after a while, you stopped thinking of that as unusual. It just felt normal that someone was always asking something from you. Maybe you were only 10, maybe 12, maybe 13 and already moving through the house like a small adult in socks. You knew where the cereal was. You knew how to keep the younger ones busy. You knew how to answer the phone properly. You knew how to say, "Mom's busy right now." You knew how to say, "Don't tell Dad yet." You knew how to sound calm before you really were. And if you were the responsible oldest child in 1970s America, you may have learned something very early. Sometimes the first child in a family is not just loved first, they are leaned on first. In many American homes in the 1970s, the oldest child was not officially called a third parent, but sometimes that was the role anyway. Not in a dramatic way, in an ordinary way. Watch your brother for a minute. Make sure your sister finishes her dinner. Tell them to get their shoes on. Stay home until your mother gets back. Do not let them fight. Do not answer the door. Keep an eye on things. The decade had its own family rhythm, working parents, tired parents, single parents, divorced parents, parents trying to keep one paycheck stretching across too many needs, suburban afternoons with nobody home yet, apartment kitchens with bills on the pro counter, back seats full of siblings, television on in the living room while the oldest child quietly kept the evening moving. And that is what many oldest children remember now. Not only that, they had chores. That they had weight. Because responsibility, when given early enough, does not always feel like a task. Sometimes it feels like identity. You are the one who remembers, the one who notices, the one who keeps things from becoming a problem, the one who is trusted because you do not have the luxury of being careless. And after a while, the family begins to believe it too. Not just that you can help, that you will. From the outside, being the responsible oldest child can look almost flattering. The dependable one, the mature one, the helper, the good kid, the one who never made things harder. And some of that may even have been true. But for many oldest children, the deeper experience was not simply responsibility. It was emotional position. You were placed in a certain spot in the family system, closer to the adults, farther from childhood, more aware of what was, strained what was missing, what needed managing. That changes a child, because children are supposed to grow into responsibility slowly, a little more each year, a little more as the world makes sense. But some oldest children in the 1970s were handed a version of it early. Not always because parents were cruel, often because life was tired, money was tight, the marriage was strained, the mother was overwhelmed, the father was absent emotionally, physically, or both. There were younger children who needed something all the time, and the oldest child was simply there. Old enough to notice, old enough to help, old enough to become useful. What many oldest children remember is not just being asked to do things. It is feeling that the emotional balance of the house depended partly on them, and that is a lot for a child to carry quietly. Children become careful when the room teaches them. 2. And oldest children often learn early that being useful starts with being observant, so they watch. They learn when mom is too tired to be asked anything. They learn when dad has had a hard day and should not be pushed. They learn when the younger kids are about to unravel. They learn how to intercept problems before they become noise. This is one of the quiet psychologies of the responsible oldest child you become good at. Reading emotional weather. Not because you are naturally wise in some magical way, because it helps. You know when to speak, when to wait, when to distract, when to help clean up, when to get your siblings outside, when to lower your own needs because the room already feels full. And from the outside, this can look impressive. The child who is so mature, the child who never needs much, the child who can be counted on, the child who acts older than their age. But often what looks like maturity is adaptation, a nervous system learning that love and approval may be easiest to secure through steadiness, through competence, through self-control, through becoming the child who causes the least trouble and solves the most. Not peace, position. This pattern made particular sense in 1970s America. Family life was changing. Divorce rose. Dual income households became more common. Economic pressure sat quietly in many homes. Mothers were carrying more than one job, whether paid or unpaid. Fathers were often still shaped by older expectations of masculinity that left emotional labor mostly invisible. And children, especially older children, were often expected to adjust. There was less hovering, less constant adult supervision, less language for emotional burden. Children were often expected to pitch in, be good, watch your brother, help your mother, handle it. And in many families, that expectation landed hardest on the oldest child, especially the oldest daughter, but often the oldest son too, in a different emotional register. The oldest daughter might be expected to nurture, organize, soothe, assist. The oldest son might be expected to toughen up early, set an example, help control younger siblings, act like a little man before he had the safety to still be a boy. In that world, responsibility could be praised so quickly that nobody stopped to ask what it was costing the child. Many families did not see it as burden. They saw it as character. And sometimes it became character. But sometimes it became something else first, a role the child could not easily step out of. Once a family starts relying on a child, the child often learns to build a self around reliability. You do not forget things. You do not break down at the wrong time. You do not create extra problems. You stay composed. You remember what others forget. You become the bridge between chaos and order. This can feel good at first. There is pride in being trusted. There is meaning in being useful. There is a certain quiet dignity in being the one adults can depend on. But there is a hidden trade inside that role. The more reliable you become, the less permission you may feel to be messy. Because messy is for the younger ones. Needy is for the younger ones. Careless is for the younger ones. Crying too long is for the younger ones. You are the one who should know better. And that phrase has shaped more oldest children than it seems. You should know better. You are the oldest. Set an example. Help out. Be patient. Let it go. You can handle it. And after enough years, some oldest children stop asking whether they can handle it. They simply assume they must. That is how responsibility turns inward. It stops being something you do. It becomes something you are. Some oldest. Children learn something subtle and dangerous. That the easiest way to keep love flowing was to need less. to be low maintenance, to be organized, to be emotionally efficient, to solve your own problems before they reached an adult, to take care of the younger ones before taking care of yourself. This is one of the saddest parts because it is often rewarded. The child who never complains, the child who helps with dinner, the child who gets the siblings ready, the child who can be left in charge, the child who always seems fine. But sometimes that child is not fine. Sometimes that child has simply learned that their own feelings can wait, that the family already has enough weight in it, that one more need may feel like too much. That being admirable is safer than being honest. So, the oldest child becomes careful with emotions, careful with timing, careful with how much space they take up in the house, and over time, that can look like personality, independent, calm, responsible, strong. But sometimes it began as self-erasure, a child quietly moving themselves to the side so the family could keep functioning. There is another layer to being the responsible oldest child. You often become aware of adult worry before you should, not in full sentences, in fragments, bills on the counter, a tense conversation in the kitchen, your mother going quiet over something financial, your father staring at the television without really watching it, the sound of stress in the house before anyone names it. You are close enough to the adults to feel the pressure, but still too young to do anything real about it. That is a strange position for a child. Old enough to sense instability, too young to fix it, expected to stay steady. Anyway, so many oldest children learn to manage what they could, keep the younger ones out of the way. Do not make more work. Be helpful, be easy, be strong. And that can create a very specific kind of adulthood later on. A person who is competent in a crisis, excellent when others are overwhelmed, comfortable carrying responsibility, but sometimes unsure what to do when there is nothing to carry, because rest can feel unfamiliar to a child who became useful too early. Some responsible oldest children grow up into very capable adults. They are dependable, practical, good at planning, good at sensing what needs to happen next. The ones people call first in an emergency. The ones who know how to hold things together. But competence has a shadow. Some of these adults struggle to relax when others are disorganized. They feel uneasy when people are irresponsible. They become resentful when they are always the one holding the emotional weight. They overfunction in relationships. They mistake usefulness for worth. They feel guilty receiving care. They do not always know how to stop being the strong one, even when nobody is asking them anymore. That is the quiet cost. Because when responsibility begins as identity, letting go of it can feel like losing yourself. Some oldest children become caretakers. Some become perfectionists. Some become private. Some become controlling. Some become exhausted from being the steady one in every room they enter. There is no single outcome, but there is often a shared thread, a very early education in being needed. And once a child learns that love, praise, and stability are connected to usefulness, it can take years to separate those things again. Maybe you remember this without needing every detail explained. Maybe you were the one told to watch the younger kids for an hour that always felt longer. Maybe you were the one who knew where everything was. Maybe you were the one who got praised for being mature when what you really were was burdened. Maybe you were the one who learned how to sound calm because everyone else needed you to. Maybe that is why, even now, you feel uneasy when other people are careless. Maybe that is why you automatically scan for what needs to be done, why you step in too quickly, why you apologize for resting, why competence feels safer Then, vulnerability. Why being needed can feel more comfortable than being loved for no reason at all, and maybe for a long time. You thought that was simply your personality. Responsible, reliable, independent, the strong one. Maybe it is who you are, but maybe it is also who you had to become. The responsible, oldest child. In 1970s, America was often admired, and sometimes that admiration was deserved. But behind it, there was often a quieter story. A child standing a little too close to adulthood. A child learning to carry what the family could not carry alone. A child becoming steady before they were fully safe enough to be young. That role can produce strength. It can also produce loneliness, because the child who is leaned on first often learns to hide their own leaning. The child who helps first may not know how to ask later. The God, 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 God child who holds the family together in small ways may grow up feeling most valuable when they are useful. They did not grow up loudly. They grew up learning how to become dependable before they fully belonged to themselves. And for many of them, that lesson lasted much longer than childhood. If this brought back something familiar, you do not have to explain everything. Sometimes one small detail says enough. The babysitting, the phone calls, the kitchen after school, the younger siblings in the back seat, the feeling that everyone expected you to know what to do. If you want, share that memory in the comments. And if you want more stories about the quiet psychology of American life in the 1970s, 1980s, and 1990s, the family roles, emotional patterns, and everyday moments that shaped how people learned to adapt, stay strong, stay silent, and grow up too early. Subscribe to the channel and stay with me for the next story. Thank you for watching.